I guess my haircut's working. Welcome to all of you. So many familiar faces and so many new faces. And we are grateful to each of you for being here, for getting here early enough to get a seat, for finding a spot to park, for getting so quiet so quickly. Wow, I might be at the height of my power, but I'm sure I'll disprove that as the minutes pass. We have a very, very special evening for you all tonight, as you know, or you wouldn't be here. I just very, very briefly thank you all again, both our longtime donors and those of you who bought a ticket and are here for the first time. I'm Lisa Starr. I'm the artistic director of the Arts Café Mystic. I've been doing this for about 7 years. We are in our 32nd year, and we have Melanie Greenhouse right here, who could maybe wave, and Melanie was the first director of the Arts Café Mystic. And then succeeded by Christy Max Williams, who is rehearsing, of course, for A Christmas Carol. When is he not? And he wished he could be here tonight to share such a special evening with us. So 32 years we've been doing this, and as anybody who's been here before knows, we couldn't do it without you. And those of you who are new to the Arts Café Mystic, we hope we got your email address and that you will consider becoming more of a regular guest at our events. So, Wally Lamb is about 12 minutes away, stuck in the construction that many of you were stuck in on the way here. He'll be here shortly, but we do need to keep moving. So I'd like to start by introducing our opening voice, Suzanne Davis. Suzanne is a wonderful fiction writer. She's got one novel and an award-winning collection of short stories. In fact, Wally Lamb did a blurb for Suzanne's last book, saying she hits the mark. I met Suzanne years ago when I was running an inn on Block Island, and we made a weird connection over writing in the breakfast room. And we now have the great joy of being, well, I'm not really a colleague, but I'm a writing mentor at the Coast Guard Academy, where Suzanne is a full-time lecturer. And we're going to hear from the novel, the short story collection, and then we're going to get a taste of a brand new story that's in the works. So let's all welcome Suzanne Davis, please.
I would like to tell a joke, but I'm not funny. This is really true. So thank you for laughing. I'd like to thank Lisa and the Arts Cafe people and the LaGrua Center for inviting me to be the opening voice for Wally. It is an honor and a full circle moment. Years ago, Wally and a writing group really helped me make the novel a stronger book, and I'm forever grateful for that. So I would like the stories of our time as seen through the lens of rural America have always interested me. Those stories sort of bubble up from the ground, and starting with the short story collection, The Appointed Hour, and The Voice of an Ancestor, and then with stories that then link her telling about her descendants. I'm not going to read that tonight because I wanted to focus on the novel and on the new thing, and the ancestor will just have to forgive me. But you know that she's the foundation. So Gravity Hill is a town with a Superfund site and secrets that need digging up after 3 boys die in an accident. And I'm going to read a bit from the beginning of the book at their memorial service. The Hawkins pulled into the parking lot of the church, a small white building with cement steps, a black door, and a wooden cross on top, located in the town's industrial park above the river. The town built the industrial park on land polluted by the Riverside textile mill. The mill had mysteriously burned down and left barrels of dye and solvents leaching into the ground. Now the town's only industry was the tire burning plant. From the Hawkins car one could see white smoke, but not the plant itself. The parking lot was almost full, and Pastor James stood at the door, waiting. He escorted the Hawkinses into the room. People huddled in the back. Only a few sat in chairs, Jordan noticed, including Mr. Z, a beloved elementary school teacher. Amid these people, Jordan wished she could escape back to the fields. When would Pastor James start? It was 1/4 the hour when he stood and said, "We come together tonight to remember Clay and Tim and Tony, all of whom died together in April." He smiled at the Hawkinses, then Tony Barbo's mother and father. Mr. Barbo wore a flannel shirt pulled tight around a swollen stomach, although the rest of him was skin and bone. Jordan remembered hearing he was wasting away from cancer or drinking. Mrs. Barbo leaned away from him while Tony's sister Tina leaned in, rubbing his shoulder with one hand and holding her toddler with the other. Pastor James gestured towards the Hawkinses. "Sam and Diane helped me organize this memorial so we could come together as one." He opened the black Bible and started to read. Jordan looked at the people, crying, hanging their heads, and hiding their tears as if they'd done this too many times before. Pastor James finished the prayer, then asked, would anyone else like to speak? Jordan jumped to her feet. She knew if she didn't do this now, she never would. She took a deep breath, and her voice shook, but she managed to say, "Everything makes me think of you, Clay." And it was true. She felt as though he was right there in the room and he was the one she was talking to. "I can't do anything without thinking of you." She looked at the people. "My brother had the best heart of anyone I know. He was always doing things for people. He was always there for me until now." "Bullshit. He's to blame." Jordan's mother yanked her back into her seat, heads turned, trying to locate the speaker, and Pastor James stepped into the center of the circle. "We want to lay blame because we're in pain, but we're here together. Let's help each other. When? Now would be a good time for that song." A man stepped out from the back of the church. "Thank you, Pastor. Tim was my cousin, but I always regarded him like my brother. His folks took me in for a while, and when they passed, it was just the two of us. He always liked this song, so I'm going to try to get through it for him." He adjusted the guitar, centered his breath for something inside himself, not the crowd. Then, from the edge of the sanctuary, his voice, low, weary, not polished, it silenced the whispers. As he sang, Wynne looked at Jordan sitting at the very edge of her chair, barely breathing. The whole room shifted. This wasn't in the program. Wynne continued singing, and when he got to the refrain, "We shall be free." His voice wobbled, so Jordan stood and joined her voice with his, and after they finished the song, she was both glad and disappointed to see him hurry out the back door. Leaving the church, the Hawkinses passed the familiar figures of Brother Michael and Sister Rachel, dressed in their white robes. Sister Rachel's gaze narrowed on Sam Hawkins. "People don't die hiding lies. Truth is dangerous in a town like this." "What's she talking about?" Jordan asked. "They're just grieving," her mother said. "Doesn't help," her father muttered, pulling them away, while down the hill the river snaked through the center of town, reflecting the moon and the teenage boys watching. So after I finished Gravity Hill, I started thinking more about the equity gap in America. Stray Dog Watch Over is a story of those pressures, fracturing a family, widening the lens to Russia, and sprinkling a little magical realism to the mix. Two siblings face pressures that seem insurmountable until time and space collapse to World War II Russia, and poet Anna Akhmatova gives them courage to stand up against the injustices they face. In this section, the sister Chloe attends a conference in St. Petersburg, Russia, and what she encounters there, who, you might say, then will turn the plot back home. I follow Nevsky Prospect to where the griffins grip the bank bridge suspension cables in their mouths. I want to touch their wings, so I climb the dais, reach up to caress the hot metal, and power zap straight into my hands, throwing me back into the crowd crossing the bridge. A breeze picks up, lifting my skirt and whipping my hair, and a woman leans toward me and whispers, "You're a witch. That's what you are," then melts into the crowd. What the hell? Her proclamation unsettles me, mostly because I felt the air turn cold and the wind change direction around her. I follow the foot traffic to the other side, waiting for the light to turn green when two police officers get out of an unmarked car. The officers approach a guy sitting on a motorcycle. He's revving his bike, staring at the light, when one of the police officers grabs him and yanks his helmet off. The man looks startled and then afraid. Before he has a chance to protect himself, the police officer smashes him in the head with the helmet. The bike stalls. The guy falls on top of it, and the police officers beat him with the helmet and their heavy boots. The man curls into a ball, but he doesn't cry out. The street turns deadly quiet. The light turns red, and people keep their heads down, scattering in different directions. I'm standing there like a scared rabbit, staring at the man when the police officer with the helmet tosses it and comes toward me. A cold nose presses into my hand. It's the stray dog, the one whose photo I've been taking, nudging me with her nose. I force myself not to run as the dog leads me down a side street to where a sign with a woman's profile hangs. Where have I seen that face? We slip through an entryway into a courtyard that smells of roses, with butterflies darting around in the liquid afternoon sun. 3 silver-haired women sit on a bench, their heads bent toward each other. The dog watches me. A ticket window next to the plaque makes a museum of some sort clear. I grab a ticket and rush upstairs, stepping into a dingy apartment with Soviet green paint. The curator points me down a hallway that empties into a tiny kitchen with chipped enamel, pans and bowls on the table, looking as if someone got interrupted from putting them away. The archway opens into a room with a glass case on a wall, some letters, photos, and bits of poetry. I feel like I've been here before, though I understand almost nothing about what I'm seeing because the cards explaining the exhibits The exhibit items are in Russian, and my language lessons haven't helped me enough to make sense of this. As I come to the end of the case, there in front of me hangs a thick card with the image of a stray dog, just like the dog outside. I start to cry. That's when the curator nudges me. English. She hands me a sheaf of papers and gestures for me to put it in my backpack. Spasiba. Before I tuck the manuscript away, I glance at the heading, bold-faced. White Hall of the Fountain House represents Akhmatova's point of view of all things being connected to one another. I feel myself float in a vortex until a breath shifts me back to the present, to the next words explaining the art. Decoration for Stray Dog Cafe from 1910, the inscription reads, Kave Kanam, meaning be afraid of the dog. The curator ushers me out, and when I get back to the hotel, the dog following, the conference organizer, Alexei, doesn't look surprised. I think you should adopt that dog. It is a small thing, but a big thing to save a dog from death. Thank you. Thank you so much.
And sorry, we had some people arriving as you were reading, so thanks so much for putting up with those interruptions. It's a wonderful problem to have, bursting at the seams with people, and we're grateful for it. So now I get to introduce our musical guest, Rhonda Larson. A little known fact, there is a bio, and the biographies for all of our features tonight are in depth on our website, trimmed here so they could fit on the back of the program. Rhonda's biography on our website will tell you a little bit more about her coming from Montana and how those big skies, big blue skies, really kind of shaped who she is as a musician in the world. Her success started at a very young age. At the age of 22, she won a huge national award as one of the best young flute players in the country. Shortly thereafter, joined up with the Paul Winter Consort, and shortly after that, won a Grammy for playing the flute with the consort. In a wonderful world where I don't really think there are coinencidences, Rhonda met her husband Lee Delisle at an Arts Café event in 1999. Melanie Greenhouse was hosting. Who were the features? Do you remember? How could you remember anything else? So Lee and Rhonda met at an Arts Café event quite some time ago, orchestrated by Melanie. I had the good fortune, I didn't know this, but I referenced a reading that I gave at the Geraldine Dodge Poetry Festival when Martina Spada was here closing out our season last year. And I talked about what it was like to hear his voice after hearing Robert Bly and Coleman Barks and the Paul Winter Consort. And then there was Martina Spada. And when I invited Rhonda to play here, she immediately looked up the Arts Café and watched the video of Martina Spada and said, I was playing that night. So wonderful, wonderful coincidences all around. Rhonda, just get up here and do it, okay?
Sure. But can you hear me if I speak without a mic?
Yeah. Yes.
Well, maybe I'll try this. Can you hear me with the mic? First of all, I am so honored to be here tonight and hear these beautiful people, and I get to be part of it. Lisa already said that I'm from Montana, and that to me is the most fortunate thing about me, I think, that I got to be born and raised in Montana. And I think there's a end line of a Rumi poem, and he says, "Let the beauty we love be what we do." Well, I get to do that, and I'm sure that all of you do that. His last line of that is, "There are thousands of ways to kneel and kiss the ground." So what a privilege to be here. And no surprise, my first piece that I'll play, it's a piece that was written for me, and it's called Montana. Thank you so much. Well, you know, I'm privileged to play these ethnic flutes from around the world. This one is a Native American flute. It's unusual because if you've ever seen one, they're usually just one pipe. And obviously this one has three. It's got 3 holes for me to make different sounds with. And, you know, I've always just had such a reverence for the Native American people. And so I wrote this piece. It's called Spirit Maiden. Thank you so much. This next piece is a beautiful melody that comes from Scotland, and it's a Celtic piece, and I'm playing it on a glass flute. And it actually would normally be sung, this song, and it really tells the story of this woman who has been promised to this boatman, and he goes out to sea, and day after day she's waiting for him to come home. You know, she goes to the cliffs and tries to find if anybody knows if they've seen him. And so we don't know if he ever comes back to marry her. It's called The Boatman. thank you so much. Well, this next piece is a piece that I wrote. It took me 4 years to write, which is way too long. Anyway, it's called Metamorphosis because it goes through a lot of changes. And I like to precede it with a poem that I really love of Rumi's called Say Yes. Forget your life. Say, God is great. Get up. You think you know what time it is. It's time to pray. You've carved so many little figurines, too many. Don't knock on any random door like a beggar. Reach your long arm out to another door, beyond where you go on the street where everyone says, how are you? And no one says, how aren't you? Tomorrow, you'll see what you've broken and torn tonight, thrashing in the dark. Inside you, there's an artist you don't know about. He's not interested in how things look different in moonlight. If you're here unfaithfully with us, you're causing terrible damage. But if you've opened your loving to God's love, you are helping people you don't know and have never seen. Is what I say true? Say yes quickly, if you know it, if you've known it from before the beginning of the universe. I forgot to tell you that I learned to sing and play at the same time. It's a very difficult thing, unusual. So this next piece is a piece that I wrote. All the sounds that you will hear on the backing tracks are flute. It's sounds of flute and the keys, and I call it Walking on Water. I'll be playing another crystal flute that's smaller, and pan pipes. Walking on Water. Well, this is be a short one, and a little Celtic tune, my last piece, and it's from O'Carolan, and it's his concerto. So thank you so much. You're a fantastic audience. I wish I could have you everywhere I go. Thank you.
What's that? Yeah, this is a pretty good time. So, thank you all. Thank you to Suzanne, whom I don't see, but I know she's here somewhere. There she is. And to Rhonda. What an incredible start to the evening. Quick thank yous that I need to do. I need to thank my board of directors. I'm not going to list them by name. Almost everybody's here tonight. They bake, they move chairs, they clean things up. They donate their time and their energy and their finances to keeping this organization going. Very special thank you on the back of our program tonight to honor our great friend Liz Raisbeck, who is shifting to California. And I promised her that's all I would say. But we love you, Liz, and our gratitude to her is beyond words. We want to thank the folks at La Grua Center for welcoming us here, I think about 3.5 years ago now. And obviously, this is hopefully our forever home. They are a wonderful, wonderful group of people to work with. For those of you who live in the area, please look them up and take part in one of their many, many, many activities, from music that matters to yoga classes to an ongoing art exhibit that shifts. One thank you that I forgot earlier, in this world with all these coincidences, not only was Lee Delisle my gym teacher in 5th grade, and a babysitter when my father was ill and we needed help, but he also was the director of Groton Parks and Rec at a time in the early days of the Arts Café Mystic when we lost our funding. And Lee was integral in finding resources to help our organization keep going. So we thank you, Lee, for that. So just a question, and it doesn't matter if you can't raise your hand, but I was curious how many people in the audience were born at Bacchus Hospital? I'm one. Okay. So I was born in Norwich, like my brother and my sister and my parents and all of my aunts and uncles, the cousins on one side and the Silverbergs on the other. And my dad was, at a very young age, a first selectman of Norwich. And he and his brother had a law practice, he and Gerson. And either above or below them was Harry Ogilnick's jewelry shop. And one of my favorite things about reading a Wally Lamb book about 20 years ago was that he not only mentioned Harry, but his wild sister Sally. And if we were really good, my dad would take us to Norwich on Saturdays and we would hope that Sally was working. She had a big head of hair, right? And Harry had like a big eyeglass, and he'd have to take it down and look at us. And so I want to, first of all, Wally, thank you so much for gracing us and for reviving us. Some of you were in the audience. It was, it's almost exactly 6 years. I looked it up. It was November 19th of 2019. Wally came and read for us. It was the final show of our fall season at the Mystic Museum of Art. And it was also the fall just before COVID. And Wally had just begun this book and basically told us its brutal premise, right? And then read us a passage from it and then said, I really don't know where it's going. So in 6 years, I've only gotten older and lazier. But what you've done with this book, and there will be time for questions afterwards, but what it takes to hold where you go to in a book in one body, I'm not sure how you do it. For those of you who have read the book, I think it's fair to say it's devastating, the way a really necessary book is devastating. So my gratitude and everybody in the room's gratitude for the places you bring us. For me personally, with these memories of Norwich that seemed sort of like one of those towns that time forgot. I thank you so much for not forgetting it. Those of us who grew up when the Norwich State Hospital was still the Norwich State Hospital, and you'd see people on the side of the road and you'd just hope that somebody was taking note, somebody was paying attention. And Wally, you've done that for so many of us, and that's just local, what you've done for people around the world with your 7 very different novels, and of course, your decades of commitment to the women at York Correctional Facility. So you know all the awards, you wouldn't be here if you didn't. Here comes Wally Lamb, you guys.
Thank you, everybody. I've always wanted to say this, and I feel very comfortable with this audience, so I'm going to say, hey, kids, what time is it? Does anybody know? Howdy doody time. Da, 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 da. Anyway, Rhonda, oh man, you're playing so beautiful and so varied. I was just mesmerized. Yeah. And Suzanne and I go way back. We used to be in a writers group together, and unfortunately I was like many of you, many of us, I guess. I was stuck in non-moving traffic on somewhere around exit 89, 90, 90. I finally got to exit 91, but unfortunately, I missed the first half of Suzanne's reading, but I caught the second half, and I remembered that story, and just how good it is, and what a wonderful writer you are, Suzanne. So anyway, as far as this thing, I want to follow what Lisa said, and actually it was about I started this novel 7 years ago, and the reason I remember that is because our second grandchild, Olivia, was born right about the time I started the novel. And so when I spoke here about 6 years ago, I had some of the stuff, and for some reason I decided to screw up my courage and read some of it to the audience here. And I think the reason why is because I always felt so welcomed and so validated by the Mystic Arts Cafe, and Melanie Greenhouse and I go way back to She's Come Undone, my first novel, and that was, I think, that was published in 1992, so we have gone a way back, right? And now I see I see a lot of evidence of Lisa Starr's really wonderful leadership too. So what I'm going to do tonight, I'm going to read a couple of excerpts from the book and talk a little bit about it, and then keeping up with my tradition of taking a chance on only this group, I'm going to read a little bit from the novel that I've started now. So it's pretty different than this other one, but I'll give it a shot. So let me tell you a little bit about how this came about. I was, let's see, 2025 minus 7 is what? 20, I don't know, what year was that? 2025 minus 7, carry the 8, 2018, I guess. Yeah, me neither. But anyway, one day I was reading the newspaper back when there were newspapers, and I came across this really frightening article, and it was about these terrible backover accidents, whereby usually it's a parent who's at the wheel backing up in a driveway or whatever, and is oblivious to the fact that there's a young child behind the car, and usually it's quite a little child, because he or she would be not visible in a rearview mirror. Anyway, I was sort of horrified. I had heard about these accidents before, but I had never really gotten into the details. And the article said that they're more prevalent than one would assume, and that 9 times out of 10, the child will survive, but with varying types of injuries, and then 1 child out of 10 will not survive, and that really scared me, because at that time, 2018 or so, we had baby Olivia, but she has an older brother who was about 3 years old at the time, and the family lived in New Orleans, and I knew they had an older car, and I had just bought a new car, a CRV Honda, and my car had a backup camera. So I called my son Jared, and I said, hey, I just got this new car, and if you want to fly up, I'll hand you the keys, take it back, drive it back, because I don't want something terrible to happen. And so he did that, and anyway, that fear of that terrible accident just stayed with me, and that's where I started in this novel. What happens if you are one of the parents who is responsible for the death of your child, and then adding to that, you were high or drunk when it happened. So there are if this is called The River is Waiting, and so I think of 3 tributaries that fed into the story, And Lisa was right when she said, I didn't know where it was going. I didn't. And I never can write that way. I always have to just show up in front of the laptop and see what the next, little piece of it is going to be. Anyway, the first tributary was that article that really haunted me and still haunts me to some extent. And the second tributary was I had just finished up with a 20-year stint as a volunteer teacher, facilitator for a writers group at York CI. I started in 1999 and went to 2019. And I tried to teach the women, some useful stuff about writing as effectively as possible. But there was a kind of a symbiosis thing going on because they were teaching me about stuff that I didn't know about. For instance, where do the wheels come off your life when you end up in prison? And so a lot of the women were writing about that. A lot of it had to do with incest when they were kids. And so anyway, they were writing autobiographically, and so I learned about people who had not had the fortunate life that I had had when I was a kid. And then some of the women, many of them, were writing not only about the history of their lives, but also about what happens to you when you get to prison. And so that was the second part. Now, Corby Ledbetter is he's laid off from his job, and he's a commercial artist, but the organization that he's working for is shrinking, and so he's laid off, and now he's the house husband and the stay-at-home dad. He and his wife Emily have 2 kids. They are twins, and they are 2 years old. And he's very anxious about not working and not bringing income into the house, and so he goes to a doctor and he gets anti-anxiety medication without realizing that that kind of medication can be addictive. And so he starts doubling up on his benzo, and he becomes dependent on it. And also he starts day drinking in secret. Now, the third tributary that sort of helped me write this book is the fact that Corby and I have a similar problem with alcohol. I was a late bloomer, so I didn't start drinking alcoholically until I was in my 50s, and I did so for about 10 years or so, and then I went into a 12-step program that really saved my life and saved my marriage and saved my career as well. And so when Corby starts going to AA meetings at the prison and before the prison, I too have been in those, basement of the church meetings. In fact, I still am. I go regularly, and I'm happy to tell you that I have now reached my 15th anniversary of being sober. So I started with that accident, and I did not know who Corby had been before that, and I didn't know about his life with Emily before that. When the story starts, they've been married for 3 or 4 years, and they were together before that. She was going to school out at UCLA. learning to be a teacher, and he was a student at the Rhode Island School of Design. And so I'm going to read a little bit of their early courtship. And oh, by the way, they both were working for the summer at Mystic Village. She was working in the bakery, selling those Joe Frogger cookies that I used to hit up occasionally, and he was working as a groundskeeper, and so he, trimmed and weeded and mowed and scrubbed goose shit off the off the sidewalks. Anyway, so this is Corby talking about some of their, one of their early summers. We got together almost every night for the rest of that dwindling summer. Went to the beach half a dozen times, made love whenever the opportunity led us, given that we were both staying with our moms. Emily's mother was iffy about me from the beginning, and she wasn't exactly reassured when she found a couple of the nude sketches I had done of Emily. He could post these on the internet, she warned her daughter. How many schools would hire you to teach if these went public? Emily's theory was that Betsy would come around once she got to know me, so I went over there for dinner one rainy Sunday in the middle of August. Emily made a lasagna, and Betsy contributed a green salad with nothing in it except arugula, oil, and lemon juice. I hope she hasn't tired herself out making this, I thought. To impress her, I had splurged on a $30 bottle of red wine and purposely left the price tag on, but I could have saved my money because Betsy barely touched her lips to the glass. After I had finished a second helping of lasagna, Emily said she had made a blueberry pie for dessert, and when she stood and started clearing the plates, I got up to help her. Betsy insisted I sit back down because I was their guest. So with Emily in the kitchen, that left the two of us. After an awkward several seconds, I said, so, your daughter says you write poetry. Oh, here and there, she said. I'm much more of a reader than a writer. Oh yeah? Well, what's your favorite book? Oh goodness, I have so many. I've been rereading Jane Eyre. That's one of my favorites. Masterpiece Theater has been running a marvelous series based on the book. I don't suppose you've seen it. No, but my mother's been watching it, I told her, which was a lie. For Mom, must-see TV on Sunday night was Desperate Housewives. So tell me, she said, is art something you're hoping to make your living doing? Yeah, maybe. I'm not really into planning my future at this point. I guess I'm more of a live for today kind of person. That means you're the grasshopper, not the ant. When I shrugged, she said, Aesop's Fables. You're very young, aren't you? As in immature and stupid, I figured. I poured myself more wine. A $30 bottle of Cabernet, yeah, somebody had better drink it. I felt like letting her know that my high school girlfriend's parents had been crazy about me. Her dad even took me fishing. Where the hell was Emily? Reaching for my glass, I knocked it over, spilling wine on their white tablecloth. Ignoring my apology, Betsy jumped up, rushed to the kitchen, and came back armed with paper towels, a dishcloth, and a bottle of club soda. Blotting, pouring, and scrubbing, she let me know that the tablecloth, a gift from her favorite aunt, would be ruined if the stain was allowed to set. Again, I'm just really very sorry, I said. Instead of acknowledging my apology, she continued to scrub aggressively. When Emily returned with the pie, she apologized that it was so juicy she had forgotten the cornstarch. Aware that blueberries stained, I ate my piece super carefully. As soon as I had the last bite, I stood and said, well, I've got to go. Already? Emily said, I made up a bullshit excuse about having to feed a neighbor's dog. At the front door, I whispered to Emily that I was pretty sure I had flunked the audition. Good thing you're not dating her then, she quipped. And don't worry about that stupid tablecloth, big deal. When I kissed her, she kissed me back in the foyer. It was pouring by then, and the ground was saturated. Backing up my car, I accidentally veered off their driveway and onto the lawn. I made a little bit of a rut, which by morning might not even be noticeable. And if it was, Betsy would have to just fucking get over it. You're very young, aren't you? What a bitch. At the end of August, Emily and I promised each other we would call or write as often as our upcoming semesters allowed. I would fly out there for the 4-day Thanksgiving break, and she would spend the month between semesters back at her mother's. So, at the end of our Mystic Village summer, we returned to our schools on opposite coasts. So, by writing about their early life, I learned a lot about Corby and about Emily. And then, of course, the terrible accident happens, and he goes to court, and he's going to be he's pled guilty, and this is his sentencing hearing. Finally, my attorney says, there can be no greater punishment for Corbin Ledbetter than to endure than getting out of bed each and every day for the rest of his life, having to face the fact that he is responsible for his son's death and the heartbreak and loss he has inflicted on his loved ones, especially Emily, his wife, and the boy's mother. I think it's impossible for us to imagine the degree of guilt, shame, and remorse that is and will be this man's daily burden. Your Honor, don't you think that's prison enough? She had instructed me to look at Judge Palazzolo when she said that, and if I had any tears left, to shed them then. Unable to do either, I bow my head and stare at the floor. The prosecutor, Attorney Reitland, could have asked for the maximum 10 years of prison. Instead, she has asked for 6. Attorney Dixon has requested a suspension of my entire sentence, 3 years probation and community service. Judge Palazzolo says she needs a few minutes of silent deliberation before rendering her decision. All rise, the bailiff calls as she stands and heads slump-shouldered back to her chambers. While we wait, Dixon speaks some hollow words of encouragement, and I thank her and try to smile, and then after that, we too wait in silence. All rise. Judge Palazzolo speaks more to the gallery than to me. In some cases, sentencing someone for a crime that's been committed is not a difficult decision to make. Cut and dried, you might say. Just follow the guidelines. But cases like this one are more complex, they're more difficult. They're the ones that can keep you up at night, before and after you've rendered your decision. She turns then to me. Mr. Ledbetter, I sympathize with you and your family. You have all had to endure an unfathomable loss. Nevertheless, I cannot unhear Attorney Reitland's argument that in order for your little boy to have the justice to which he's entitled, the state must hold you accountable for the tragedy that resulted from your having broken the law. That said, I am not granting the prosecutor her request that you serve 6 years in prison. My decision is that you are to be incarcerated for a period of 5 years, suspended after 3, and another 3 years on probation. I will not mandate your attendance at 12-step meetings during your incarceration because I believe that recovery from addiction must be self-motivated, not ordered by the state. That said, I sincerely hope that this is something you will want to continue to work on for yourself and your family. Good luck, Mr. Ledbetter. I wish you well. And with that, she gavels my case to a close and leaves the courtroom. 2 court sheriffs approach with cuffs and shackles. I look over my shoulder at Emily, hoping to make eye contact, but she is already heading for the exit with her mother. From there, I look at my own parents, still seated. Mom is glum but stoic. Dad is in tears. Who would have thought that? And there, behind them, is my therapist, Dr. Patel.
who has come after all, when she said she might not be able to. Her hands are clasped in front of her, and when she sees that I've spotted her, she offers me the gift of a compassionate smile. Outside, I squint in the bright summer sunshine. I am boosted up and into the back of the transport van. A few minutes later, I'm on my way to Yates Correctional Institution, where I will spend the next 36 months of my life. Inside the van, I'm chained to two other prisoners. The guy next to me is snoring, and the guy next to him has puke all over his shirt front. It's sweltering in here, and the stench is so bad I hope I don't start vomiting myself. Good to go, someone calls. Car doors slam, the engine starts, and the van lurches forward, rolling out of the courthouse parking lot and onto the downtown street. From behind a caged window, I watch a blur of trees and cars, storefronts and pedestrians, glimpses of the freedom I've just lost. 2 or 3 miles into the trip, the snoring guy startles himself awake, yanking the chain and me with it. Turning to his left, he gives me a bleary-eyed once-over. "Where'd you come from?" he wants to know. When I tell him, he says, yeah, he got picked up in Bridgeport, and the guy to his right was in Hartford lockup. "Can you believe my shit luck?" he says. "This is my second bid, and both times I get stuck next to some dope-sick junkie. At least this one didn't get any on me." The other one groans. "Not yet, anyway." "This your first joyride in the ice cream truck?" "What? Never mind. You just answered me." And then a substantial amount of the story is his survival in prison. He doesn't think he's going to make it, but as things get a little bit more, routine to him, he begins to think, okay, I can do this for 3 years, and along the way, there are terrible things that happen to him, terrible things that he observes, but also some small acts of kindness and grace as well. So anyway, I don't want to talk about the ending of the story, but I would be able to talk obliquely about it. So that's the story. It took me about 7 years to write. When I came here and shared that part of the story 6 years ago, I had left my publisher, my long-term publisher, HarperCollins, and I didn't have a publisher. I didn't have a book contract. I was just sort of, floating out on my own and not thinking maybe that, the story would not get published. And then I'm happy to say that not long after that, I got a new agent, a new literary agent, Bill Clegg, and he brought the story to Mary Sue Rucci, who has worked a long time at Simon & Schuster. And ironically, Simon & Schuster was my first publisher, so I did a full circle and came back to Simon & Schuster. And then since then, and Mary Sue she's a real editor. So whereas I had a polite editor at HarperCollins, now Mary Sue was. Well, she wasn't impolite, but she was pretty direct in her advice. And one of the things that happened was in the part that I showed her, I had this original idea that I would have this tandem thing going on. So it would be a chapter in Corby's point of view, and then the next chapter would be in Emily's point of view, and then it would go back to Corby, and then it would be going back to Emily. And one of the first things that Mary Sue said to me, she said, I don't know if that's going to work. She said, but it's his story, we've got to survive along with him, and you can certainly represent Emily, but do it through him. And so, I resisted at first, and then I realized, God damn it, she's right. I hate that when my wife over there is the same. She'll say, "Oh, I wouldn't do that. I would do it this way." Yeah, right. Yeah, okay. Thanks for the advice.
And then, of course, she turns out to be right 99% of the time. But anyway, I bear no resentment, Chris. Anyway, so that's it. I did not expect a lot of things to happen after this book was published. Certainly, one of the biggest surprises was when I picked up the phone and it was Oprah on the other end. And she had already picked She's Come Undone for her book club, and then she turned around the next year and picked I Know This Much Is True. And so I was not expecting, I didn't have a fantasy that she was going to call again, but she did. And she said, Wally, how many years has it been since we talked? And I did the math in my head and I said, I think 27 years. And she said, well, you've written a hell of a book, and we're going to feature it as our June book club. I said, geez, Oprah, are you sure? I said, that's 3 times you picked me. And she says, yeah, well, that's my prerogative, isn't it? And I said, well, who else has been picked 3 times? And she said, Toni Morrison and Marilyn Robinson and William Faulkner. And I thought to myself, well, hot dog, that's good company. So anyway, it all worked out fine, and I've been doing a lot of traveling this summer into the fall, and my favorite part of the evenings that I do now are the Q&A. Now, I did promise that I would read you a little bit of this, and this is the new one. And are we good for if I do about 10 minutes? Yeah. Okay. All right. So this is a sample, and it may change a lot between now and then, and then I'll open it up for questions. I was Josephine Naomi Mapes, born in Bayside, Queens, New York in 1897. In 1926, the year I was 29, I was trampled to death in Manhattan, 2 blocks away from where the melee had begun. As I died, my energy left the body it had animated for nearly 30 years, and I rose. Looking down at my broken corpse below, I felt nothing. Energy, after all, is electric, and electricity is devoid of sentimentality. It was time to go, so I caught a light breeze that carried me away. It took getting used to this life after death. I had been led to expect pearly gates and winged angels, reunions with loved ones who had passed. But afterlife is nothing like that. You are alone in a vast nothingness, left to solve mysteries and the meaning of life that you've had. I sometimes miss the world of the living with all its smells and tastes and sounds, its joys and sorrows, its memorable and mundane days. But this incorporeal existence has benefits too, the chief one being a widening of perspective, a kind of omniscience, I guess you'd say. With it comes a greater understanding of the person you were, and the mistakes you made, and the people with whom you intersected, and the place you called home in the world you inhabited, and what it all meant. I was the middle child of 3. Like my 2 brothers, I was birthed on the kitchen table of our family home at 77 213th Street. But unlike theirs, mine was a breech birth after a 14-hour labor. According to my mother, this was an early sign that of her 3 children, I would be the most difficult. Of course, she did not live to see the kinds of things my brother Ezekiel got mixed up in. If she had, she might have changed her mind. Zeke was her favorite, but he took a terrible turn. Our parents were Archibald Archie Mapes, a first-generation Queens native of Scottish and British descent, and Augusta Ashby Mapes, a barber's daughter from Poughkeepsie, whose great-great-grandfather had fought in the Battle of Bunker Hill. Papa worked as a passenger train conductor on the New York Central Railroad.
He first laid eyes on my mother when she and her spinster aunt Theodora were traveling to Manhattan to attend a performance of the comic opera HMS Pinafore starring their famous cousin, Lillian Russell. Punching Mother's ticket, Papa became intoxicated by her innocent countenance, her honey blonde hair, and the gardenia perfume she was wearing. From the start, he said, I was smitten. He would say that whenever I asked him to repeat the story of their first encounter. Yes, and Aunt Theodora was peeved, Mother would add, a faint smile on her lips. In Auntie's book, a masher in a conductor's uniform was still a masher. Move along, she told your father. She's too young. Her mouth still smells of mother's milk. Of course, I was 15, and I was mortified. Yeah, but I was persistent, Papa would boast. A friend of mine from Poughkeepsie knew the Ashby family, and so he got me the address. And I wrote to her for a year before she finally agreed to go with me to the Midlothian Society picnic at Flushing Park. I had not anticipated that Aunt Theodora would accompany us as Gussie's chaperone, but there she was, seated on the blanket between us, eating heartily from the picnic lunch I had packed for two. Still, my foot was in the door, and 6 months later, your mother and I were husband and wife. Did your famous cousin attend the wedding? I asked Mother. She said no, that Lillian had not been invited. By then, we had found it necessary to disavow her because she had had a child out of wedlock, and then married the father, divorced him, and married again, this time to a bigamist. Aunt Theodora was a proud member of the Daughters of the American Revolution, and she had advanced my name for membership too. She did not want cousin Lillian's low morals to jeopardize my chance of being accepted. High morals, low morals. My mother wore whalebone corsets and was cinched into by her strict adherence to what her aunt had taught her was proper behavior for members of the fairer sex. She expected me to adhere to these moral codes as well, and for the most part, I complied. I remember being shocked the day Hortense, my friend from secretarial school, told me she supported suffragist Virginia Woodhull's advocacy of free love and the right of a woman to obtain a divorce if she had a terrible husband. I didn't dare tell my mother about my friend's radical views. Horty visited our house once, after which Mother voiced her disapproval of the bifurcated skirt she had worn. Pants are for men, she huffed, and a big-bosomed girl should be trussed up more firmly, lest her movements become a distraction. Men cannot help themselves once they're aroused, so it's the woman's duty to avoid tempting them. To challenge her, which was something I enjoyed doing, I remember asking, so which is it, Mother? Is Horty unfeminine because of her bicycle riding outfit, or too feminine because of her bosom? My question stumped her for several seconds. Well, both, she finally said. And may I remind you, Josephine, that a young lady is judged by the company she keeps. Well, what's that supposed to mean? What's wrong with Hortense? I'm not saying anything's wrong with her, just that she's not our kind. Meaning, well, she's Jewish, isn't she? For all you know, her people could be anarchists. I think I better stop there. Thank you. So it's partly historical fiction, but it's the character that's more important. Now, do we have time for
We got time for a few questions.
Q&A? All right. I love this part.
Raise your hand if you've got a question.
Yes.
So do you have a title for this new book?
I do not have a title for this book, but Josephine is the main character. And of course, I always use titles based on music that I like, right? And so I did find I found a song by Fats Domino called "Oh Josephine." That may or may not be the title. I don't know. I don't even know what the story means yet. So it's still very new. The paint is still wet. But thank you for listening to that. I feel more relieved now that I've done it. Anybody else have a question? Yes, in the back.
How did you come
Corby? How did I come up with that? I remember. There's a musician called, and his name is Corby Linker. I think he's like in the South or something. And he was, I did a thing down in Nashville, and he was the master of ceremonies. And so we met beforehand, and I said, Corby, I said, that's such a cool name. He spells his with a K, Corby, and his last name is Linker. And I said, how did your parents name you that? What was the story on that? He goes, I don't know, I'll ask him. So then the next time we talked, he said, oh yeah, I asked my parents about my name. And I said, yeah, what did they say? He says, they said they couldn't remember. But I liked the name, and so I used it. And then I also used the surname of one of my prison students, Robin Ledbetter. So I made him Corby Ledbetter. So that's how that happened. One more question?
Got one right there.
Yeah.
So the arc of the protagonist is different from some of your earlier novels. Without giving away the spoilers,
Yeah.
how did you determine sort of Corby's arc?
Yeah.
How it would unfold?
Well, there's some of you probably know and admire the writing of John Gardner, John Irving, and he always says, he's quoted as saying, well, of course you have to know how the story is going to end before you write the first sentence. Well, Johnny boy, that's how it works for you. It doesn't work that way at all for me. I get a character who I'm worried about, and I start writing from his point of view or her point of view, and I have to keep writing to see what's going to happen. So the arc of the story kind of reveals itself to me little by little. So it's not something I know some writers outline and they know, what's going to happen along the way, and I don't. So for instance, I didn't know, Lisa mentioned that the last time I was here, it was in the fall before COVID descended on us all. And so when I started this novel, it was 2017, I think I said, and back then there was no COVID. But when COVID happened, it really hit prisons hard because of the confined spaces and the fact that correctional officers would leave at the end of their shift, go out into the world, and then come back. And a lot of the guys who were COs were, they thought it was not macho to wear a mask. And so there was a protocol. You were supposed to, when you went in for your shift, you were supposed to wear the mask. But nobody really, from my vantage point, nobody really checked it that carefully. So the guys would have the guards would have masks, but a lot of them would stick them in their back pockets. And so when you're out in the world and then you come back into a sort of a private world that has chain link and razor wire, you can bring the infection in with you. And of course that happened in prisons all over the country. And so I'm in touch with some of the women that I worked with, and a couple of them are really struggling still with long COVID. But that's one of the disadvantages of that tightly confined space that they all live in, men and women who are incarcerated. Okay. One last question?
I got one quick.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry. And then, okay, so we got to hear where the idea came from for where the river is waiting.
Yeah.
The new book, what's the driving, the point of beginning?
I don't remember. All I remember is that
it was writing itself more easily than almost everything that I've written. I had to get a name first, and that name that sort of was like an engine, Josephine Mapes, and I like getting lost on the internet, and so one thing what I would say, okay, well, she was born in 1897, what happened in 1897? And so I would go on Wikipedia or whatever, and that would become part of the story. And I said, okay, what famous people were born in 1897? And Amelia Earhart was one, and Moe of the Three Stooges was another, and a very flamboyant silent actress named Pola Negri, who was engaged to Rudolph Valentino at the time, and she was very scandalous. And then Joseph Goebbels from the Nazi. So those are four of the people. So then you can take something like that and begin to play with that kind of stuff. So that's how this started to be written. With my friend Wikipedia and the internet, and then you've got to research more deeply than just Wikipedia, but it's a good starting place. So yeah, this one's been fun for me to write. I wrote a little Christmas book called Wishin' and Hopin', and that was fun. That was fun for me to write. Usually, because I'm writing about serious things. Sometimes it's torturous for me to go down and turn on my laptop. But anyway, that's how it started. And nobody's asked me that, so I'm glad that I was able to come up with an answer. All right, so I guess that's probably, we're on a schedule here. So I just wanted to say thank you all so much. I want to say a special thanks to for the loyalty that the Mystic Arts Café has extended me. I'm really grateful. Thanks.